The way a day begins determines how it unfolds, and the first voice the heart listens to shapes every reaction that follows. Before messages arrive, before demands pull for attention, before the mind begins to rehearse worries or plans, there is a sacred window in the morning where direction is quietly set. When the heart turns to God first, it is making a decision about authority. It is declaring that no situation, no pressure, no responsibility has the right to define the tone of the day before God does. What is first becomes foundational, and whatever is foundational influences everything built on top of it. Too often, the day begins with noise. The mind wakes up already racing, already solving problems that have not yet shown up, already replaying conversations from yesterday. Anxiety does not usually start at noon. It starts the moment the eyes open. But when the heart is intentionally turned toward God at the beginning, that cycle is interrupted. Instead of reacting, the soul responds. Instead of being driven by urgency, the spirit moves with purpose. This moment of turning is not about long words or perfect prayers. It is about posture. It is the quiet choice to acknowledge God before acknowledging pressure. Giving God the first thoughts of the day is an act of trust. It says, I believe you are already ahead of me. When the heart does this, it no longer feels like the day must be carried alone. Strength is received before strength is needed. Peace is established before stress attempts to enter. Even when the schedule is full and the challenges are real, there is an inner steadiness that comes from knowing the day has been placed in God's hands before it ever reached human ones. When God is not first, everything else competes for control. Worries rush in to set the agenda. Fear begins to speak louder than faith. Decisions are made out of pressure instead of wisdom. But when God is acknowledged first, the heart becomes centered, priorities align, the mind slows down enough to hear direction. What could have become overwhelming becomes manageable because the soul is anchored. Turning the heart to God first also shifts perspective. Problems may still exist, but they are no longer the biggest reality. God becomes larger than the task, greater than the obstacle, stronger than the fear. This shift does not remove responsibility. It removes panic. It does not cancel effort. It purifies intention. The heart learns to move through the day led instead of pushed. There is power in beginning the day this way because the heart carries momentum. What the heart is filled with early will surface later. If it is filled with fear, fear will speak when pressure rises. If it is filled with faith, faith will respond when challenges appear. Starting with God is not a religious routine. It is a strategic choice. It prepares the inner life before the outer world makes its demands. When the heart is aligned at the start, the entire day is approached from a place of confidence, clarity, and trust rather than survival. The condition of the heart acts like a lens through which every moment of the day is interpreted. Two people can walk through the same situation, face the same challenge, and yet experience completely different outcomes. Not because the circumstances changed, but because the posture of their hearts was different. When the heart is restless, even small problems feel heavy. When the heart is fearful, uncertainty multiplies. But when the heart is steady and aligned with God, The day may still bring pressure, yet it does not bring collapse. The heart decides whether the day will feel like a burden or a journey. An anxious heart magnifies what could go wrong. It scans the future for threats and turns possibilities into certainties of failure. From that place, decisions become rushed, words become sharp, and patience grows thin. The day feels longer than it is because the heart is carrying weight it was never meant to hold alone. Stress does not come from the schedule as much as it comes from the condition of the inner life. When the heart is unsettled, even moments meant for rest cannot be enjoyed because the mind is still fighting invisible battles. In contrast, a surrendered heart does not deny reality, but it refuses to be ruled by it. It acknowledges challenges without allowing them to take authority. This kind of heart understands that peace is not the absence of trouble, it is the presence of trust. When trust is rooted deeply, the heart remains calm even when answers are delayed. Waiting no longer feels like punishment, it becomes preparation. The day unfolds with a sense of stability because the heart is anchored to something greater than circumstances. The posture of the heart also determines how people are treated throughout the day. A guarded heart reacts defensively, assuming harm where there may be none. A wounded heart interprets neutral moments as rejection, but a heart grounded in God responds with grace, patience, and discernment. It listens before speaking. It pauses before reacting. It understands that not every battle deserves a response. This kind of heart protects relationships and preserves peace even in difficult interactions. When the heart is aligned, challenges become assignments rather than threats. Pressure becomes an opportunity to grow rather than a signal to retreat. The same workload that once felt crushing becomes manageable because the heart is no longer carrying fear alongside responsibility. Energy is no longer wasted on worry, leaving room for focus, creativity, and endurance. Strength flows more freely because it is not being drained by inner conflict. The day does not improve because circumstances magically change. It improves because the heart is no longer fragmented. When the heart is whole, it is not pulled in multiple directions by fear, doubt, and insecurity. It moves with clarity. It rests even while working. It trusts even while waiting. This inner alignment shapes how the day is experienced from beginning to end. What once felt overwhelming becomes navigable, not because the day is easier, but because the heart is stronger, steadier, and rooted in faith rather than fear. The struggle for control often disguises itself as responsibility. The mind believes that if it holds everything tightly enough, plans carefully enough, and worries thoroughly enough, the outcome will be safer. But beneath that effort is anxiety, quietly draining strength and clarity. Surrender challenges this instinct not by encouraging passivity, but by realigning authority. When control is released into God's hands, anxiety loses its position of influence. The heart no longer has to manage outcomes it was never designed to carry. An anxious heart is always reaching ahead, trying to predict, prevent, and protect. It rehearses conversations before they happen and prepares for disasters that may never arrive. This constant mental effort creates exhaustion long before the day truly begins. Surrender interrupts that cycle. It acknowledges limits without shame and accepts dependence without fear. In surrender, the heart confesses that wisdom does not come from overthinking, but from trust. This shift immediately changes how decisions are approached and how pressure is processed. Alignment replaces anxiety when surrender becomes intentional. Instead of asking, how do I control this? The heart begins to ask, what is the right direction? This question opens space for discernment. Decisions are no longer rushed to relieve stress. They are guided by clarity. Even when answers are not immediate, the heart remains steady because it trusts that guidance will come at the right time. Waiting stops feeling like loss of control and starts feeling like cooperation with divine timing. Surrender also refines motivation. Anxiety-driven actions are often fueled by fear of failure, fear of judgment, or fear of missing out. These fears push the heart into motion without peace. When surrender takes place, motives are purified. The heart moves not to prove something, but to obey something. This kind of movement is calmer, more focused, and more sustainable. Effort becomes purposeful rather than frantic, and energy is used wisely instead of wasted emotionally. There is relief in surrender because it removes the burden of perfection. Anxiety demands flawless outcomes and immediate results. Surrender accepts process, growth, and learning. It allows room for mistakes without self-condemnation. The heart becomes patient with itself and others, understanding that progress does not require pressure. This gentleness strengthens resilience, making it easier to recover from setbacks without losing confidence or peace. When surrender governs the heart, alignment follows naturally. Thoughts begin to settle, emotions stabilize, reactions slow down. The inner life becomes ordered, not because everything is predictable, but because trust has taken the place of fear. The heart no longer reacts to every disturbance. It responds with discernment. Anxiety loses its voice because it no longer has authority. This alignment creates a foundation that carries the heart through the entire day. Challenges still arise, but they are met with wisdom instead of worry. Decisions are made with confidence rather than desperation. The heart remains open, steady, and directed, not because control was achieved, but because surrender allowed peace to take its rightful place. Many regrets are not born from bad intentions, but from rushed decisions. When action comes before direction, effort can be wasted and consequences can linger. The heart often feels pressure to move quickly, to respond immediately, to fix things as soon as they appear. But wisdom is rarely loud, and guidance is often missed when the pace is driven by urgency rather than discernment. Seeking God's direction before taking steps creates a pause that protects the future from unnecessary correction. When the heart moves ahead without guidance, it relies heavily on emotion, past experience, or limited understanding. What feels right in the moment may not be right in the long term. Pressure can disguise itself as opportunity, and fear can masquerade as responsibility. Without divine direction, the mind fills gaps with assumptions, and choices are made to relieve discomfort rather than to establish stability. This is how regret quietly enters, through decisions that were hurried, not evil. Inviting God into the process before action shifts the foundation of decision making. It slows the heart enough to listen, This listening does not always produce immediate answers, but it produces awareness. The heart becomes sensitive to warning signs, inner checks, and quiet confirmations. Direction does not always arrive as dramatic clarity. Often it comes as peace or restraint. Learning to honor that restraint prevents steps that would later require apology, explanation, or repair. God's guidance also provides perspective beyond the moment. While the heart tends to focus on what is urgent, divine wisdom considers what is important. It sees the ripple effect of choices and understands how one decision influences many areas of life. When the heart submits its plans before moving forward, it gains access to foresight rather than hindsight. This foresight reduces regret because choices are rooted in purpose instead of impulse. There is also protection in waiting for direction. Some paths appear attractive but carry hidden costs. Some conversations feel necessary but could be destructive if spoken too soon. Some opportunities seem beneficial but are misaligned with the season. Guidance helps the heart distinguish between good and God-directed. This distinction saves time, energy, and emotional strength. It keeps the heart from becoming overextended and the life from becoming cluttered with unnecessary commitments. Taking action after receiving direction produces confidence. Even when outcomes are uncertain, the heart remains calm because the step was not taken alone. There is peace in knowing that obedience was prioritized over speed. If challenges arise, the heart does not spiral into self-blame because it knows the decision was anchored in guidance, not guesswork. This confidence creates resilience, allowing the heart to stand firm under pressure. Seeking direction before action also deepens trust. Each guided step reinforces the understanding that wisdom is available and reliable. The heart learns that it does not need to rush to be effective. Progress becomes intentional rather than reactive. Over time, this practice shapes a life that moves with clarity and purpose, reducing regret not by avoiding mistakes entirely, but by ensuring that choices are made with awareness, patience, and trust rather than pressure. Every day presents a choice about what will hold authority over the heart. Circumstances constantly attempt to claim that role by presenting urgency, uncertainty, and pressure. When problems arise, they demand attention and insist on being treated as the defining reality. If the heart submits to those demands, the day becomes reactive, controlled by whatever situation is loudest in the moment. But when faith is intentionally chosen as the governing force, circumstances lose their power to dictate direction and emotion. Faith does not deny what is happening. It repositions, it challenges remain real, but they are no longer ultimate. When faith governs the day, situations are filtered through trust rather than fear. Instead of asking how bad something might become, the heart asks how God might work within it. This shift immediately changes emotional responses. Stress is reduced not because the problem disappears, but because the heart is no longer overwhelmed by it. Circumstances are unstable by nature. They change quickly and often without warning. If peace is tied to them, peace becomes fragile. Faith provides stability because it is anchored beyond what can be seen. When faith rules, the heart remains steady even as external conditions fluctuate. Delays do not create despair. Setbacks do not erase confidence. And uncertainty does not produce panic. The heart understands that temporary conditions do not have permanent authority. Fear often rises from the belief that the future is out of control. Faith counters this by affirming that the future is held even when it is unclear. This belief allows the heart to remain calm in moments that would otherwise trigger anxiety. Instead of rushing to escape discomfort, the heart learns to endure with patience and expectation. Waiting becomes an act of trust rather than a sign of defeat. When faith governs the day, decision-making changes. Choices are no longer made simply to avoid pain or secure comfort. They are guided by conviction, wisdom, and purpose. The heart becomes less impulsive and more discerning. It no longer reacts to every obstacle as a threat. Some challenges are recognized as opportunities for growth, refinement, or redirection. Faith provides the courage to move forward when circumstances suggest retreat. Faith also influences language. When circumstances rule, speech is filled with complaint, worry, and defeat. When faith rules, words begin to align with hope and confidence. This does not mean ignoring difficulty, but it means refusing to give negativity the final word. Speech becomes a reflection of trust rather than tension. This verbal alignment strengthens the heart and influences the atmosphere around it. Choosing faith as the governing force is not a one-time decision, it is a daily practice. Each moment presents an opportunity to submit either to fear or to trust. Over time, this consistent choice reshapes the inner life. The heart becomes resilient, calm, and focused. The day unfolds with a sense of purpose, not because circumstances cooperate, but because faith has been given authority to lead. When the heart is turned fully toward God, something shifts beneath the surface of daily life. Blessing is no longer treated as a rare event or a distant hope. It becomes a consistent flow that shapes how the day unfolds. This does not mean every moment is easy or every outcome is favorable, but it does mean that the heart begins to recognize God's hand at work in ordinary situations. Favor appears not always as sudden breakthroughs, but as quiet provision, timely help, and inner peace that cannot be explained by circumstances alone. A heart aligned with God becomes receptive. Instead of striving to force outcomes, it learns to recognize open doors and to respect closed ones. This sensitivity protects the heart from unnecessary frustration. What once felt like rejection is now understood as redirection. Delays are no longer interpreted as denial, but as preparation. This understanding allows the heart to remain hopeful and steady, trusting that every moment is being used with intention. Daily blessing often shows itself through protection. There are paths not taken, words not spoken, and decisions delayed that later reveal their purpose. The heart may never fully know how much harm was avoided or how many unseen battles were fought on its behalf. Yet there is a growing awareness that guidance has been present all along. This awareness strengthens trust and deepens gratitude, making the heart more attentive to subtle signs of care and direction. Favor also manifests in relationships and interactions. When the heart is aligned, it carries a calm confidence that affects how others respond. Conversations become smoother, conflicts de-escalate more easily, opportunities emerge through connections that feel natural rather than forced. This is not manipulation or coincidence. It is the fruit of a heart that is grounded and open. People sense authenticity and peace, and that atmosphere invites cooperation and goodwill. Strength is another form of blessing that flows from alignment. Even on demanding days, the heart finds endurance it did not expect. Fatigue may come, but it does not overwhelm. Discouragement may knock, but it does not take residence. There is a resilience that rises quietly, enabling the heart to continue without bitterness or despair. This strength does not come from self-reliance. It comes from trust that replenishes what effort alone cannot sustain. Confidence grows as the heart remains aligned. This confidence is not rooted in ego or certainty about outcomes, but in assurance about direction. Even when the path ahead is unclear, the heart is not lost. It moves forward with peace, knowing it is not walking alone. Mistakes no longer define identity, and setbacks no longer determine worth. Each step becomes part of a larger journey shaped by purpose rather than pressure. As alignment becomes a daily practice, blessing stops being something the heart chases and becomes something it recognizes. Favor is seen in small victories, quiet moments, and steady progress. Life is approached with expectation rather than fear. The heart learns to rest while moving, to trust while working, and to hope while waiting. In this posture, each day carries a sense of meaning and assurance that extends beyond circumstances and into lasting peace.